Welcome to Bible Essentials. My name is Sarah Ruff. We are reading Matthew 22 today. We're reading about how the kingdom of heaven is like a king who is giving a wedding feast for his son. Grab your Bibles and let's do it. Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. And he went and he sent out slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding feast. And they were unwilling to come. Again, he sent out other slaves, saying, 'Tell those who have been invited, behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen, my fattened livestock, and all are butchered. Everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast.'" So obviously they had already been invited, but then the king sends out the message and says, "Okay, those of you who had been invited, it's ready. It's time for you to come." But they were unwilling. He's like, "Everything is ready. The fattened calf, it's been cooked. It's ready. Come on." But they paid no attention and went their way, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his slaves and mistreated them and killed them. Do you see how this is very much what we've just read about the landowner saying the same thing about what we read last week of the parable and the landowner. But the king was enraged and sent his army and destroyed the murderers and set their city on fire. So now what? Then he said to his slaves, "The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the main highways, and as many as you find there, invite to the wedding feast." So their city, where he invited the initial guest, they're not worthy. He burns it down and he murders those who murdered his slaves. And he says, go to the main highways. Well, when you go to the main highways, you're going to get foreigners. You will get foreigners. Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered together all they found, both evil and good. And the wedding hall was filled with dinner guests. But when the king came in to look over the dinner guest, he saw a man there who was not dressed in wedding clothes. And he said to him, "Friend," there's that familiarity. They knew each other. He was able to say friend. There was a familiarity. "How did you come in here without wedding clothes?" And the man was speechless. Now, the whole key here is wedding clothes. Not evil, not good, but wedding clothes. That's the issue. He didn't have wedding clothes on in this wedding festivities, at this wedding feast. And what you must know is in that day, they would give wedding clothes. They would give people festive robes and things to wear, wedding clothes to wear, so that it all looked that much better. Boy, things haven't changed much more today, right? It's all about the look and the feel. Everyone's got to look the part, look good. And the man was speechless. Let me finish this out and then I'll read you a couple verses. "Then the king said to the servants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into outer darkness in the place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called,'" or many are invited, "but few are chosen." Okay, the main thing here, the problem with this man is that he did not have wedding clothes on. So you've got to see, well, why? Why was that a big deal that he didn't have wedding clothes on? What could that possibly mean? Well, let me take you to a couple verses and read it for you. Go with me to Isaiah 61:10. Back in your Bible, Isaiah 61:10. It says, "I will rejoice greatly in the Lord. My soul will exult in my God, for he has clothed me with the garments of salvation. He has wrapped me with the robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself with a garland, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels." So just as a bridegroom decks himself with the garland and the bride puts on her jewels, God puts on our righteousness. He gives us our righteousness, and He clothes us with salvation. Psalm 132, 9. So just go up, Psalm 132, go back, 132, 9. It says, let your priest be clothed with righteousness, and let your godly ones sing for joy. But let your priest be clothed with righteousness. I've got one more for you, Zechariah 3, 1 through 4. Zechariah 3, 1 through 4 says this, then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at the right hand to accuse him. Again, remember, the high priest represented the entire nation of Israel. That was his job before the Lord. The Lord said to Satan, the Lord rebuke you, Satan. Indeed, the Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire? Now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments and standing before the angel. He spoke and said to those who were standing before him, saying, remove his filthy garments from him. Again he said to him, see, I have taken your iniquity away from you and will clothe you with festal robes. But do you see how the removing the garments, the dirty clothes, which was representative of God taking away their iniquity and clothing them in festal robes? That, I do believe, is the word picture here. That's the word picture. He did not have the righteousness of Christ or salvation. The robes had not been put on him, but he was a friend. He was familiar with this. I do believe this is a Jew, those leaders, representing those leaders who thought they were getting in to heaven based on their works and what they had done, not based on them just receiving their righteousness, based on their faith, based on Christ's righteousness on them. And Paul speaks to this in Romans. That's exactly what they tried to do, is tried to earn their way through their own righteousness instead of on Christ's righteousness. All right, verse 15, then the Pharisees went and plotted together how they might entrap him in what he said. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are truthful and teach the way of God in truth and defer to no one, for you are not partial to any. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to give a poll tax to Caesar or not? Don't you know, in many ways, I mean, they were testing Jesus, but at the same time kind of throwing it in his face. Yeah, you say you're the Son of God and you're king, but who's sitting on the throne? Whose name is on the coin? Caesar. You say you are, but Caesar's on the throne. But Jesus perceived their malice and said, why are you testing me, you hypocrites? Meaning you say one thing, but you do another. Show me the coin used for the poll tax. And they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, whose likeness and inscription is this? And they said to him, Caesar's. Then he said to them, then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And hearing this, they were amazed, and leaving him, they went away. On that day, so that same day, the Sadducees get a little piece of Jesus, who say there is no resurrection. So the Sadducees believe that when you die, you just die. That's it. You turn to dust to the ground. There's nothing after. So they come to Jesus and they question him, asking him, Teacher, Moses said, if a man dies having no children, his brother is next of kin, shall marry his wife and raise up children for his brother, this kinsman redeemer. This is what this is. Now, there were 7 brothers with us, and the first married and died, and having no children, left his wife to his brother. So also the second and the third, down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For they had all married her. But Jesus answered. How does Jesus answer this whole thing? He said to them, "You are mistaken, not understanding the scriptures." So he flat out says, you've made a mistake. You don't understand what the scriptures are saying, nor do you understand or grasp the power of God. He says, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven." Now, it doesn't say they are angels. It says they are like angels in that they are not married or given in marriage in the resurrection. But regarding the resurrection of the dead, he's throwing this in because he knows they don't even believe in the resurrection. "Have you not read what was spoken to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living." When the crowds heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. But when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. One of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And he said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law of the prophets." Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question. "What do you think about the Christ?" What do you think about the Christ? "Whose son is he?" Listen to what did they say. They said to him, "Oh, it's the son of David." They got that part. So then listen to what Jesus asked them. He said to them, "Then how does David in the Spirit call him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies beneath my feet'?" If David then calls him Lord, his own son, Lord, how is he his son? No one was able to answer him a question, nor did anyone dare from that day on to ask him another question. So Jesus, what a deep question. He's like, "Okay, who is the Christ? Whose son he is?" And they're like, "Oh, he's the son of David." Then Jesus says, "Okay, well then how is it that Jesus actually calls him Lord?" They understood that the Christ would be the son of David. What they didn't understand is that he would also be the Son of God. All right, next week we're going to read chapter 23, and we are going to hear how Jesus gets all over these Pharisees. You're not going to want to miss this one. I'll see you next week.